Welcome to the Record Stop. I'm your host for today, Alex Irwin, and I'm here to talk about the wonderful world of vinyl. On our last segment, I talked about loudspeakers. We discussed how loudspeakers reproduce sound waves by pushing air, compressing and contracting it to form the sound wave our eardrums can interpret. We also discussed the difference between an active and passive system of loudspeakers, and what the difference means for your audiophile setup. When setting up your loudspeakers, though, there is a whole slew of information you should know before you go out and buy a pair, or even before you hook them up and play some sweet tunes. When looking at a superb pair of speakers, you'll often notice two different sized cones in the loudspeaker housing. If you remember from our previous segment, the cone is the circular indented part of the speaker that actually moves and compresses the air. These two-sized cones are called the tweeter and woofer. The smallest of the two is the tweeter, and the larger of the two is the woofer. The tweeter handles all of your high frequencies, and the woofer all of your lower frequencies. They work in tandem to reproduce your middle frequencies. For example, if you were playing the sound of a train screeching to a halt, most of that sound would come from your tweeter. However, if you were playing sound of, say, a musician playing the bass guitar, most of that is coming from your woofer. It is important to have these separate speaker components to create a richer and more fulfilling sound. If you used only one speaker and emphasized your mid frequencies, your sound isn't going to sound as airy and full. That's why sound coming from your superb speakers will always sound better than the sound coming from your speakers on your smartphone. The smartphone speaker just simply doesn't have as much of a frequency response as your bookshelf speakers. When placing your speakers in your setup, it is important to understand how the sound waves coming from your speakers behave. Once again, the difference lies between your high-frequency sound waves and your low-frequency sound waves. Your highs are usually directional, while your lows are usually omnidirectional. This means the sound waves coming from your tweeters, your high-frequency waves, tend to go in a straight line and where the speaker is pointed. Your lower frequencies, though, tend to radiate in all directions around the loudspeaker. Knowing that there is a difference, we can place our speakers in ideal locations. When placing the loudspeakers, you first want to decide where your listening position will generally be, whether this be a dedicated lounge chair or a couch. First determine where you will most likely be when listening. From this point, you want to create a sort of an equilateral triangle of sorts between your loudspeakers and yourself. We call this the listening triangle. It is the ideal placement for speakers. You want there to be a little bit of distance between your loudspeakers so that you can get the full stereo effect. That listening triangle rule also means that the sound from the left and right speakers will be reaching your ears at the same time, which further helps the stereo effect and synchronizes the music. You also want the speakers to be pointed towards you and at ear level. This helps with hearing your higher frequencies. As I said before, the higher frequencies are very directional, so to hear them clearly, they need to be pointed right at you. You might have a subwoofer in your setup, which is basically a loudspeaker dedicated to very low frequencies to give your sound a rich bass. For home theater, placing the sub in the corner of the room is usually the go-to. It amplifies the bass by creating more reflections of sound due to its omnidirectional nature. This is good for weaker subs. However, if you have a superb high-quality subwoofer, try placing it closer to the middle of the room, and preferably at least 6 inches away from the wall. The bass then won't be overpowering and will be more musically tuneful with your loudspeakers. And that is what to consider when setting up your loudspeakers. Directionality and placement are key to a good flowing sound. On the next segment, I'll teach you all about turntable quality and what separates the poor turntables from the high quality ones. See you at the next stop.